So, tonight's episode is about service and what it takes to come back from the edge. My guest, Nate Morgans, has spent a lifetime serving others as a member of the U.S. Army National Guard and on the front lines of the Tulsa Fire Department. But behind that service was a battle with alcohol that nearly cost him everything: his career, his family, and his life. After years of trying everything, AA, rehab, detox, nothing stuck until one decision changed everything. So, Nate, I really appreciate you taking the time, and I've looked forward to this conversation since we booked it. So, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. That's awesome.
So, you've lived a life of service from a really young age. What pulled you towards both the military and firefighting? How did you end up there?
The military pulled me towards that. I had to get out of Tulsa. I had itchy feet when I was 18 years old and had to do something different. Didn't know what it was. I just needed, you know, I didn't want to be at home anymore. Didn't have a bad home life. I was so independently minded that I was just like, I'm going to go towards my own path and do this. But in retrospect, I did everything my father did. So it's not really forging your own path if you just do everything your dad does. But that because dad was in the army and dad was a Tulsa fireman. So I went and joined the army and got into the early commissioning program and commissioned in 1998 as a 20-year-old. And then wanted to come back and finish my degree and go back to active duty, but that's not how the army worked. They said, "Hey, you got to finish your first service commitment in the National Guard." And I was kind of bummed out. And that's why I ended up a fireman because I was like, crap, I got to get a job. What am I going to do? I was trying to go back to the army. That wasn't an option. So I got hired on the fire department in 1999. It's been the history since then, really. Um, then September 11th happened and, stuff kind of got real. And Oklahoma was one of the first National Guard units to deploy to Afghanistan in 2003. I was a part of that. We had a larger embedded trainer team mission as a brigade. I think I was 25, 25 years old then. And I was married, I had our first baby like 2 weeks before I left. It was a challenge. I think, in your 20s, you're way more resilient, like made of rubber. Like you could just bounce back and do things. And I think I drank like a soldier drank or a fireman drank. I think I drank like everybody else, which I know now not the is definitely not a healthy habit. But for sure, when I came home in 2004, we spent a whole year there. When I came home in 2004, I drank every day I was off. Um, I just thought, hey, that's how I unwind. And I just continued to do that for the next 20 years, which was, very unhealthy. But when I did come back, I achieved a bunch of success on the fire department. I was able to promote a couple times, 3 times to district chief. And I think I promoted to captain or promoted to lieutenant in 2005, promoted to captain in 2007, and then promoted to district chief in 2014, and was really on an upwardly mobile track, preparing myself to be in a position to be an executive level chief officer. And I got into the executive fire officer program. That's a 4-year program with the National Fire Academy and graduated from it. I went and got a master's degree from the University of Oklahoma in public administration with they've got a lot of emphasis on nonprofit management in that program. That's foreshadowing, into the
Yeah.
future. And then, kind of rocked along in the Army National Guard too. I was a major, and my last tour was into Ukraine in 2017 and 2018, and came back, and things at home were rocky, and it wasn't exactly how I remembered, the marriage being, and it didn't, when that ended, I I wasn't prepared for that kind of upending of my life, so to speak. So everything I thought that was true was no longer true, and I got a DUI in Fayetteville, Arkansas, in August of 2019, and that really started my slide downwards. Because that wasn't enough for me to stop drinking. It was just enough for me to get, I moved out of the house, went into an Airbnb, floated kind of around that for a while, and then on the Veterans Day of 2019, had another alcohol related event. Didn't know how I got home really, and it was that's what got me demoted on the fire department. So it demoted 2 ranks to lieutenant, and about that same time, COVID hit, and the Army called and said, "Hey, we need you to come do this basically COVID duty for a year and a half," and I did that, and um, that was unique because I was able to work with. It's more foreshadowing in the future because I was working with a bunch of the current legislators that are there now and the governor of Oklahoma for about a year and a half. And so I got to know a lot of people and they knew about my story and, they were cheering me along. And there were very bouts of not drinking where I would go, 5 months not drinking or 6 months and not drinking. And then I'd always have this concept like, I think I beat it. I think I
Yeah.
beat it. I can, think I can go have a beer with my friends now. And pretty quickly I would be wrong and just, back into the main swing of things. And I eventually moved back to after COVID, moved back to Tulsa, was re-promoted to district chief because I'd served out my suspension of rank time. And it was interesting because it was harder to come back to being a chief than it was to be demoted because there was had people that weren't on Team Nate, and they were very outward about that. And
Wow.
they did not really, they had no vested interest in seeing me succeed in the way that I was trying to succeed, which was in my mind, in my sick mind, I was like, oh, I'm back. Now everybody will, they'll ask me questions and let me help and do everything. But that's not how it worked. They still didn't trust the sick Nate, and rightfully so, honestly.
Right.
And then that's the first time I went to inpatient treatment, which is I went to a place called the Center of Excellence. It's an International Association of Firefighters sponsored location in Maryland, in Upper Marlboro, Maryland. And, thought I had it beat again. I came home for about 3 weeks and then went back for another 2 weeks. It was, you know, I presented as a very chronic relapsing drinker of someone who just really didn't want to accept that, you know what, you're an alcoholic, you can't drink ever again. So from 2019 to 2024, I rode that denial of like, you know what, you might be able to beat this someday and be normal, be a normal drinker. And when I was in inpatient treatment, my roommate was a guy named Wade Hood. He's an Arlington, Texas fireman. He's a crazy guy. I love him to death. He's like brother, little brother. Wade and I were kind of accountability buddies, back and forth. And I would call Wade when I was not drinking and say, "Hey man, how you doing?" And he'd tell me, "Hey, I'm not doing really good," And he'd do the same for me. And then one of those calls, he said, "Hey, I'm going to go do this ibogaine thing." Mexico. And that he said, "Well, this is what it is." I said, "Well, let me know how it goes when you get back." And he went and came back, and much like all of us that go and sit with ibogaine, came back on fire for ibogaine. Like, oh my gosh, why didn't I do this forever ago?
Right.
And just a little tidbit: Wade had been to rehab 7 times. Like he had been to like I'm not saying he's a worse alcoholic than me, but he's not any better, for sure. And we joke about that all. He was here in Tulsa this week, and we were joking about this with others, and they just kind of look at us funny, like, "Why do you guys talk so like, openly about your addiction?" We're like, "Because we were dumbasses. We were because we're just firemen." But he called me, and I was at my farm out south in Tulsa, and he said, "Man, I want you to apply for this. This is for you. This is for veterans." Which he's obviously wrong for that, but like he's like, I think it's just for veterans. I think I just snuck in, dude. But you should go. You should for sure go." And he made me fill out an application to the Casey Student 343 Fund. And when I did, our founder of this Casey Student 343 Fund is Angela Student, is from Tulsa, Oklahoma. And she's like, "Hey, you're from Tulsa. Like, we grew up in the same town. Like, tell me what your story is." And I told her, she's like, "All right, you're in. We'll get you in as soon as we can," which was like a month and a half. And at the time I was trying to I was not drinking. Notice I don't say sobriety. Like I never achieved sobriety until after medicine, but I had various periods of not drinking. But you're not supposed to drink 10 days before. And I think it's 14 days now. Probably a better idea. But like I drank 10 days before. I went and got a 6 pack of beer and said, "This is my last shot. I'm doing it." And that's how sick my brain was. And that was November 21st of 2024. That's the last time I've consumed anything like that. So, but my experience with ibogaine was wonderful and hard. Not the easiest thing in the world to do. Everybody's experience is different. They talk about most of the podcast and about ibogaine talks about these were my visuals. I had some visuals. They weren't seriously prophetic, like it wasn't something that was like, oh my gosh, that makes more sense now. It was like, those little red discs of pictures when you were kids, you
Yeah.
could put disc in.
Yeah.
Those were my visions. They just went like just like that. And it started with a movie screen, and the right side of it was very clear, and the left side was pixelated. And these little minions were working on it, and then they fixed it, and the screen went up, and they went yay! And that's when the Vista View thing started, and I was like, oh, that's weird. And I started asking the medicine like, hey, what are you trying to show me? It would just get pissed and start over. Like,
Funny.
and I was like, "Okay, I'll shut up and just sit here and watch for a while." And I don't know how many hours that happened, but I went to sleep and then woke up the next day and, had a gray day. My day was exceptionally gray. I was in bed for 24 hours, and the day before I woke up. I was like, "Okay, I don't know what's going on, but something feels a little bit different." And that 4th day at MBO, we sat with 5-MeO DMT, and then, that was a completely different experience for me. That was me being shot, strapped to the front of a rocket, shot into the galaxy, and the galaxy folding in on itself and then unfolding into a different galaxy. And then I broke through into this white space, and I could see the love my kids have for me and that I have for them, and how pure and unconditional that was. And I heard a voice say, all is forgiven. Everything that ever has been and everything that ever will be is forgiven. Why are you worried? And I looked down at my legs and saw 100 pounds of guilt and shame melt off of me, and was just like, this is amazing. Still that constant idea of, love being the only true thing, and how every molecule in the universe is connected to every other molecule in the universe. And that idea of oneness and that sudden understanding was just a lot, like tears run down your face. You're just like, this is so beautiful. I just didn't realize. And they tell you that you'll know if you want another hit of this. And I was
Right.
like, ooh, do I want another hit of this? And the same voice that told me that all is forgiven said, the medicine is within you. And I was like, oh crap. Well, I mean, I guess I'm done. And then
I
I
guess
just
I'm
got up.
done. Oh,
and
that's
then
wild.
and I, sat and looked at the Pacific Ocean and ate a bowl of fruit and was just like, this is just so amazing. How do I, and you almost knew how the earth has a frequency. And in order for us to be functional, we just have to be in tune with that frequency, and just like intuitively knew all these things. And I'm like, these are not words, Heather, that would have ever come out of my head. Like, I am a knuckle dragging fireman infantryman. Those are my two chosen paths in the life. So, but it changed my life. I mean, it completely shifted my mindset. And we drove back to San Diego the next day, and I didn't fly back that day because I was scared. Because you've seen all those stories of people flying home on shrooms and doing a bunch of weird stuff, right?
Right.
Arrested. My career can't afford to get arrested on an airplane anymore, so I try to not do that. So I stayed in San Diego for a day and went to that aircraft carrier, the USS Midway, and read every plaque. And about 4 hours into walking around down there, I was like, "Man, I don't wanna drink. That's weird." Like, normal me would have said, "Hey, there's a bar over there.
Sure.
Let's go belly up to that bar and drink 5 or 6, and then go to a different bar so that they're not judgy about it, and drink 5 or 6 more, and then just go pass out and go to sleep." I just didn't have any desire to drink, and it is like that today. It is exactly like that today, and I'm so grateful for that. But that in turn turned into this giant advocacy in where I'm at now. When I came back, I wrote like a 10-page essay in like instead of journaling. I'm not good at writing with my, handwriting things. So I typed a 10-page essay of like my whole experience. I'm like, okay, this is what it is. And I just set it aside. I'm like, okay, I've journaled. This is good. I stuck with my integration program, and come to learn that that's where the real medicine is.
Right.
The real medicine exists in integration. It is the medicine, ibogaine is an excellent pattern interrupter for, all these things that we go through. And the reality is that the rebuilding of those neural pathways and positive behaviors, that's where the real medicine is. Establishing and becoming a part of a community, that's where the real medicine is. I didn't buy a giant hat for podcasts or any crystals or anything like that yet. But like, I was, like, heading down a different path in my life. I'm like, "Wow, there's something to this. There just
Right.
has to be. I tried this other way, this did not work well for
Right.
me. I still haven't found a podcast hat that's going to fit my head. That's going to look good. But I got involved in political advocacy with Americans for Ibogaine, became an ambassador for them, started Oklahoma for Ibogaine, initiated legislation this last December. Technically, we've been through a House floor vote, four different committees, needed the House or the Senate. We're waiting on a Senate floor vote. Ultimately, we'll be one of like five states that have real legislation authorizing stage one clinical trials of ibogaine in 2026. What I suspect will be a busy legislative year for 2027 after President Trump signed this executive order, essentially lighting a fire in the federal machine. Um,
Right. Which is critical.
well, I it was the shot in the arm that the cause needed,
Right.
uh, because the way our bureaucracy is, and you cannot argue with what is, it would have taken double the amount of years that we needed, and I dare to say that I'm a success story of this process, and if I can be saved through this, how many others can? And I've obviously stayed involved with 343, became a board member of theirs. Our founder was wanting to transition to a different role as the chairman of the board. Rightfully so. She'd been honcho in this machine for almost 3.5 years, and handed the reins off to us, and we fight like hell every day to process the I was telling somebody this just a little bit ago. In the last 30 days, we've had more than 50 applications. And that our initial strategic goal was, hey, let's try to get 120 first responders through this year. And there's only so many spots I can get right
Right.
now. And so we're fighting to raise money every day. We're fighting to get these folks, placed every day. We're working with other nonprofits to provide integration for them who don't have that critical infrastructure that Angela Scuden built. Angela Scuden and a lady named Jill Brodsky built this single handedly by themselves, and just knew what worked. We've got to build a robust integration program that's just not send you down to Mexico, slap you on your behind, and tell you good luck. It's got to be something we hold on to these humans for a 12-month period where we're constantly checking on, where there's a level of accountability. And it's where we've refocused recently, and relooked at our mission statement and some of our strategic planning. And what we're most concerned about is longitudinal recovery and outcomes. Like, I can get people to medicine. We want outcomes to be different. We want lives to be changed. And anecdotally, we are. The majority of folks that go and sit with Ibogaine are completely different when they come back.
Absolutely.
And we had a survey instrument that they produced, and by no means is it scientific, but at the same time, 100% of daily drinkers that responded to this survey are no longer daily drinkers. 100% of respondents to this survey who used SSRIs are no longer using the SSRI. That's pretty good evidence, right? But so now our challenge is, okay, let's shape this into a scientific instrument that we can, use and just keep measuring that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Um,
Because there's no studies aren't out there yet on it,
nope,
and they
they're
need to
not.
be.
The evidence is in front of you. This redneck from Tulsa went and did it, and he's better. But we could be a little more eloquent when we say that. We could say things like, here's the percentage of actual, resurgence and back into a productive member of society. But we're cautious too. You don't go around saying, hey, you only take this once, you never have to go back. It's not ever.
Right.
What I tell our organization is constantly is we're not in the always or never business. We didn't start that way. We're not going to end that way. This is something we have to look at each and every individual case as a person who's trying to get better. And we just got to measure it that way and provide a safe enough container for them to actually exist. That's kind of the roundabout story. Really, I don't know.
Yeah. That'll be really exciting to see that research down the line.
I agree. If you're a nerd like me and will read that stuff, yes, that is exciting stuff. And if you lead with your heart, like a lot of people, just access. I mean, I'd love to turn our strategic goal of 120 this year into 240 next year. But
Right.
the sad fact is that it costs money to do that. We were almost solely funded by Angela Scuden for 3 years. And she spent 1.5 million of her own money to send the people that she sent. And so now we have to be focused on fundraising. Um, we've got a couple, three different strategies for that. The first of which is like just for the price of a cup of coffee a week, for $3.43 a week. If I can get 6,000 people in America doing that, we can send those 120 firefighters and police officers and EMTs to medicine every year.
There you go.
Seems like it's easy, right? But
Yeah. I mean, that's, maybe a third of a Starbucks coffee, right?
yeah,
It's doable.
$3.43 a week, and you could do that by going to 343fund.org, and there's a button to donate. But we honestly really need it. We've looking at doing some dinners with some donors and really showcasing some other first responders stories of success because we have touched every side of the United States now. I mean, we've got people on the West Coast and the East Coast and right here in central great state of Oklahoma. But it's, and I can't be the only voice for this. There needs to be other people, talking about what we do. Society has to get okay with it. I mean, by no means does my fire department, endorse this, but I won't quote their name, but the result was, I don't care what you're doing, my friend Nate's back. And that's as good of a endorsement as I need, really.
Yeah. And that speaks volumes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
it,
they said you looked younger too when you came back, right?
oh, yeah, I think I do still. I
Yeah,
tell everybody, that, but no, I don't. I'm still grizzled and old. I'm 48. I still have some time left though. I got a few years left in me to stick around the firehouse. I go in tomorrow, which is good news. Yeah, it's a nice day to hang out with your friends and
for sure.
go solve problems together.
Now, how many have been down at Ambio since you came back? Or to ibogaine, wherever?
We exclusively use Ambio right now, and honestly, that's a function of the number of spots we're granted by them. I mean, they're an integral partner to us. Trevor Miller and Jonathan Dickinson and Jose, all the team of Ambio. They're a big part of why 343 can exist and achieve that success. I think that we've probably, since I've gone, which was a year and a half or a little over a year and a half ago, probably another 100, maybe.
Wow.
Like I said, it's typically anywhere from 7 to 14 a month that we send. We're working on a deal so that we can try to just kind of dial that in
Sure.
to a certain number per month, and then it'll be a little easier for us logistically to just. But there's some challenges with that too. We can't be picky, because especially if we're to use Ambia. Ambia treated us well, and it's been a great organization to deal with. So, but eventually, especially now that it's in the news and it's in front of everybody's mind, and it's what's normalizing is firefighters, veterans, police officers, and EMTs raising their hand and saying, "Hey, I'm not doing good. I'd like some help." What's normalizing is actual treatment facilities reaching out to us who normally treat first responders, saying, "Hey, what do you guys? How do you feel about somebody leaving an inpatient treatment and going straight to ibogaine?" And so, in our minds, we're building out this concept of, "Hey, what does right look like?" Because at 343 we don't feel that ibogaine is step one. It's not. If you have a substance abuse issue and have never been to a AA or NA meeting or have never been to an inpatient treatment and are still in full on denial that if I just take this pill, that it will make it go away, I don't think you're ready for the medicine.
It's the
Uh,
wrong intention.
right.
Yeah.
And so there's some folks that, we tell, hey, go work a program for a little bit
Sure.
and then, come back to us. Even if you're not successful, that's still working a program. Complete cessation of drugs and alcohol is it's hard as shit. I mean, it's not easy for everybody.
Right. Right.
But start that program, and then we see more and newer drugs that are prevalent, like kratom and fentanyl, obviously, and cocaine's making a big comeback in some
Yeah.
places.
I've
Um,
heard that.
and it's stuff that you're like, okay, well, we just work with the medical team at the clinics and making sure people are in a safe spot. Let's build a plan, and at least you have a team of folks that care about you, building that plan around you and saying, we can do this. And I did it, so can you. I promise you. I don't suggest drinking the 10 days before, but
Not ideal, no.
no,
No.
no,
What does sobriety feel like today compared to what you thought it would feel like?
freedom, absolute freedom. Like, the difference between being sober and not drinking, I probably didn't see until about 7 or 8 months after being back. and just like think about when you're addicted to a substance, it becomes the center of gravity of your life. You still have other centers of gravity, especially if you have kids or something. You're like, hey, I'm going to take my kids to this practice, and then I'm going to take them home, and then I'm going to go get some drinks, or I'm going to go do this, and or I'm going to go on vacation, and we're going to do an all inclusive trip because all it is drinking. Or I'm gonna. That's how I was. But when I talk to other people in the space, they're like, "Oh my gosh, you're describing my whole life." I mean, everything was around finding that substance because, um, they tell you that if you treat if the only tool you have in your toolbox is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail, right?
Yep,
So
yep.
that was the only thing I had. And what I know now, post ibogaine, post being a purple belt with a wisdom dojo, and doing all these things, is now I can regulate my own central nervous system without anything. I still get mad, I still get agitated, and or sad about things, but now it's more of a practice of meditation, of catching those thoughts, realizing if I'm sad about something that's in the past and it's not something I can really change, or if I'm worried or anxious, that's something in the future and I can also not change. And the things that I can do or be the best version of Nate today, in this moment right now. And I try to be. And I just live my life that way. And how freeing it is to not be burdened with where am I going to get beer, or where am I going to go get whiskey, or how am I going to take that central nervous system down a level so that I can relax and so that I can have fun. I told somebody this the other day, like I was at a 10, like anxiety wise, 24/7, right? And then I would drink and I'd get to like an 8 and I'd be okay. I feel normal. Today I walk around at like a 4, I feel like,
Yeah.
I still have stuff, especially with managing 343 and, trying to be a legislative advocate and talk about not being able to control stuff. Try to pass a bill in your state, and then feel if you control anything.
Right.
It's tough. Um, Man, staying sober through passing a bill, that's another accomplishment. So,
Yeah,
just thought,
truly.
yeah, because
Yeah.
those guys will make you want to drink. I promise you, state legislators and that process, I see why they drink. It's been such a blessing that I don't have to do that. I'm super fortunate. My kids are almost all grown. My youngest is 7. They'll be over here tonight. They're pretty self-reliant. I don't have to like go to soccer games or anything anymore. So
Right.
I've got this window in time where, if 343 needs me to go somewhere, I go somewhere. I mean, I travel, and I'm going to New York this week and going to San Diego this weekend, and then I'll come home and then I'll catch a couple shifts at work and like maybe 2 in a row. You never know. And then wait for the next, thing I gotta go do. But I feel like it is such a gift to be able to do this. I'm at
You're enjoying every minute of it by the sounds of it.
not the legislative.
Right. No, I'm sure nobody enjoys that.
I'm doing that because I said I would.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've learned so much. And what's crazy, it's more in line with what my master's is in. And so many of those legislators were actually students with me at the University of Oklahoma and in the
Wow.
master's program, because it's a pretty common program for them to go through too. And
Yeah.
you start to figure out like the ins and outs of like, how does the Senate work? Who does this? And why is it that, one person on a committee can basically decide if your bill lives or dies, and then that person becomes the most important person in the world, and you get convince them to, hear your bill, and then they do, and it passes that, and then the next, the next step we're at right now is waiting on the Senate floor leader to say, yeah, we'll hear it on the Senate floor, and they're busy right now. They got some other fights, and we still have a few weeks of time to. But I'm confident that it'll be heard, and I'm,
Right.
confident it will pass, and it'll go to the governor's desk, and it'll be nothing short of a miracle that my goofy butt was able to pass a law in the state of Oklahoma. But um, and there's no money on this particular bill. It's just authorization for stage 1 clinical trials. But it did create a fund so that next year we can go back, especially in light of what the federal government's done, and really dial in how do we access dollars for this. And I think the strategy stateswide should be access to those opiate abatement that are not necessarily being used for research right now because of the known success of ibogaine in relation to opiate withdrawal syndrome. I think that it's a good use of those dollars, and it keeps us out of the pockets of the state and the general funds that exist in each of these states. So, how much do you know about politics? It's not fun.
Not much. I try to stay out of it as much as possible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good. That's good, strong advice.
Yeah. I have a master's in public health, but I don't get involved with the legislation. Yeah. Not my jam.
I worked when I was in COVID. I worked with the state Department of Health, and the current commissioner of the Department of Health is a guy that I worked with every day for like 10 months. And so when I started this, I went to him and said, "Hey, Commissioner Reed, Keith, old buddy, old pal, I need your help on this a little bit." And, but they're the named agency for Oklahoma,
Okay.
uh, so it'll be interesting to see how it all works out in the long run. I think Oklahoma's really primed, and we've got a lot of good stuff going for us in the state of Oklahoma that some states don't. And I think we got a good chance of being at least a part of the solution here.
Yeah. That's an exciting step.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if someone was listening right now, either a firefighter or veteran or just someone struggling with addiction who feels stuck the way that you did, what would you want them to hear?
There is a way out. I encourage, this happens to me all the time actually. I mean, like pretty often people find out, hey, Nate's the CEO of this thing, and they'll refer a friend of a friend, and they'll call me randomly and like, hey, man, I'm in this situation. But the number one issue they want is they're afraid of how people will see them if they admit they have a problem.
Right.
And it's tough to tell humans that we're human. Um, because we're not, in from the military perspective, I think Scott talked about this on your podcast. We have these masks and this tough guy
Yeah.
persona that we place on ourselves for so long. Joined the army in 1996. I just retired in 2024. I mean, I had this persona, this mask for so long that I would refuse to accept help. I didn't need help. I was an infantry officer. I don't need help. I'm a firefighter. I don't need help. I'm a dad. Or you insert whatever excuse you have for not needing help. All of us need help. So we got to really normalize you're a human. It's okay to not be perfect. And then just the knowledge that there is a medicine out there that once you start getting down the right path and accepting that, you've got an issue with this substance or you've got an issue with mental health that you really need to work on, I think that this is a good program for you. And like I said before, we're the absolute opposite of fire to forget. The 343 design gets you to medicine, brings you back, puts you in a community. You go, when we send people to medicine, we send them as a whole 343 group. They get to meet before they go. They're establishing relationships with these people that are. I talked to a guy I went to medicine with yesterday from Florida. I still do all the time. I think they're all still surprised that I'm in charge of this now, but I still talk to them. And
Right.
we establish those groups and they become a part of a larger 343 community. And then they not only are they getting those individual coaching sessions post journey for that 12-month period, they're also, two different weekly post journey community calls, almost like a support group
Sure.
who can sign in on and call. And it's just a Zoom. Not only that, the spouses have their own weekly call. So people that haven't gone to medicine and just their spouse did can call and say, this is what I'm struggling with, how different they are, you know?
Right. Right.
And and then it's they're just as much a part of this healing journey as everybody else is. So I think we've really dialed it in. We've got a pretty good, very resilient integration program that is getting some pretty good results out of some folks. And essentially taking that, if you can commit that 5-day time frame and an hour of your week for the next 12 months, that's a pretty easy commitment to reform yourself and be the best version of yourself that you didn't even know could exist.
Right. And I feel like once you've sat with the medicine, you want to do that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's not even a question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's and people that haven't sat with medicine, they're like, oh, those people sound like they're a little bit crazy. Um, we are. No. Uh, There's I've never known anybody to come back from ibogaine with less spirituality,
Right.
less of an understanding that, man, this world is way bigger than me. I'm just a meat sack on a space rock. You know, and it's good. You can become. I came back and was very spiritual. Still am. Still read a lot about stoicism. Still spend a lot of time focusing in on what I can do.
Right.
uh, how can I affect this situation? Not in the future, not in the past, but right now, today. What can I do? And I think that's a healthy way of living. I really do. I mean, it keeps us grounded and in tune with what's happening in front of us. And, um, and sometimes people just need that. Angela talks about this, that mirror effect of like, look, this is how you're actually being. You need to like, you can let go of the handrail that you're holding on to as your excuse that all this happened. Like,
Right.
you've got a part in this too. And then once you accept that and move on, it's just like, that's pretty freeing. That's nice.
Yeah.
I didn't drink because I was an alcoholic. I drank because I went to combat or I did this and all these hard things I've ever done in my life. And that's not the reason I drank. I drank because my central nervous system was agitated all the time and I needed to shut it down. And that's the way I learned. That's what it worked.
Right.
It worked until it didn't, you know?
And societally, I feel like that's a normal coping mechanism,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I can't believe it. I just had a conversation an hour ago about this. Like, and I'm not pro marijuana or anything else, but like, I love how even cities today will still say, well, that's it. It's an illegal drug. And, but there's policies literally out there that says you can drink 4 hours before you come to work as long as
Right.
yeah. Like, that's not okay. Like, there's not any better than for you to go, like, and trust me, as a guy that used to, like, know exactly what time I had to shut it down, which was 0400, that's 4 AM. I can't drink after 4 because the policy says I can't drink after 4. I would drink until then, and it's very normal. I wasn't sleeping. I got to the point where you couldn't, if you passed out, that wasn't sleep either. So you're just tenuously tired. I mean, I don't know about you, but I sleep so much better now.
Yeah. It's lovely. It is
I
lovely.
could get I could be a little bit less old man and not wake up at 5 AM every morning, but, like, at 9:30, I'm like, "Oh, crap, I'm gonna go to bed. That's
Yep.
nice." And I just fall asleep, and then at 5 AM, "Ding. Hey, I guess I gotta go do some adulting."
Yeah. It
That's
feels normal too. Like this is how you should
Yeah,
go to sleep and wake up.
yeah,
Yeah. Just love it's great.
yeah, this that medicine and this Casey Scooten 343 fund saved my life. I mean, it just simply did. I don't think I'd have lived another 5, 10 years. I'd either drank myself to death or been so depressed I'd have just chosen to end my own life and had varied bouts of that. And so it's what a gift.
Right. Well, thank you so much. I mean, your story is so powerful, not just because of where you've been, but obviously where you're at now and everything that you're doing. So I just appreciate your honesty and your willingness to share this with everyone.
Sure. Yeah. I feel like I'm honored to get to do so, to be honest with you. I hope other people hear it. And I hope other people hear it and say, hey, we should do? We should donate to 3435 because they really need it. That's
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely.
Casey Scooten 3435.org, or it's just 343fund.org. Sorry.
I'll be sure
But
to
it's,
link that too.
yeah, it was, we work our butts off trying to get firefighters, police officers, and EMTs to this. So
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
thank you.